Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. Because I like to debate. You're my share. We're conservative. In progress. Seriously. Come on, grow on. That's all me. Hey. How are you, Mr. Rudy? I'm very happy for that. That's for certain. You probably haven't retired yet, have you, sir? I got two of them on the floor of my office. Just said it's closing. It's her favorite story.
Doing all right, how are you?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Tabernacle Township Committee meeting for November 25th, 2019. Please stand for the flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sunshine notice. This meeting is called pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law, meeting of November the 25th, 2019, was sent to the Central Record, Burlington County Times, and Courier Post, posted on the bulletin board in Town Hall, and has remained continuously posted as required notices under the statute. In addition, a copy of this notice has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk. Roll call. Deputy Mayor Brown. Here. Committeeman Lee.
Here.
Committeeman Moore.
Here.
Committeeman Gates. Mayor Barton.
President.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go into recess. We have Holly Funkhauser, who comes to visit us once a year from the Burlington County Board of Health, and I'd like to ask for a motion for Resolution 2019-117.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mayor Barton.
Yes. Holly, would you want to come forward?
Thank you for having me again. So I'm here from the Burlington County Health Department. I am the health officer, and I'm here just to kind of give you an update on the activities that the health department conducted for Tabernacle over the course of the last year. And I will want to start out by thanking you and Bob for their participation in our emergency preparedness exercise this year, which happened to be the drive-through food clinic as well. The health department does plan that in an emergency, if we needed to give out vaccines or pills, how we would do this to everybody in the county. And so we asked for volunteers about who would want to help test their plan this year, and Tabernacle was gracious enough to volunteer. And so we had a great exercise back in October. We had a lot of good lessons learned and how we can improve things. And so we appreciate the township stepping up and helping us with our emergency preparedness activities. And so just to give you a quick update, so over the course of the last year, we've done 21 restaurant inspections, 101 potable water inspections, so those are your well activities, 186 septic activities, which could be plan reviews, pit tests, installation inspection, re-applications as well. We did all your recreational bathing, camp inspections, kennel inspections, and we had a total of 5 complaints come in from community members. None of them were founded. They were all investigated. None of them were determined we needed action taken on them. We had one complaint about somebody thought somebody was running a kennel out of their house, and it turned out not to be the case. We had 2 odor complaints and 2 complaints about leaking oil. And our staff went out to them multiple times to make sure they were unfounded and no action was needed. The only other item of note is the New Jersey Department of Health and the New Jersey DEP are working together to send out letters to various homeowners to do some gross alpha testing of the wells within Tabernacle. Gross alpha is commonly found in drinking water. It takes a long life exposure and a high level for it to really cause any health concerns, but they want to study it basically through the Private Well Testing Act. Everybody knows that when you sell your house and you have a well, you have to have it tested, and those results come into the health department. Houses that may have had elevated gross alpha levels, some of the neighbors are going to be notified and offered free testing through that program through the state health department and DEP. The health department doesn't have a direct role in it, but they did notify us of it, and then we notified the township that this was going to be going out in case people called and had questions about what was going on. And that's about it.
Ms. Shaw, just for the record, Committeeman Yates to join us. And any questions?
Here.
Any questions from the committee before we open it up to the public for Holly?
Actually, I do. If you're just talking about the wells, if someone had already had their well tested and replaced, are they still eligible for this?
I believe so. They were picking out homes that were in a certain radius of houses that tested positive, and I believe anybody is still tested because your well should be tested for gross alpha about every 5 years anyway. So even if it had been replaced, they would be eligible.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, we're going to open this up to public comment. If anyone from the public would like to speak, please come forward, state your name and address. Mrs. Brooks?
Do you want me to come up
Yes,
there?
please.
Okay. Brad Brooks, Morris Meadow Road. This is to address the, do you have, can I look at her? Am I allowed to? Thank you. Do you have any, an estimate of how many wells might be tested in Tabernacle?
Under this grant?
Under this grant?
Or under the program? That, yes, they did say, let me see, I have a copy of the letter that they sent us. Let's see, they're planning on sending out 26 letters to the neighbors of Private Well Testing Act, the wells tested high for gross alpha.
Okay, so these are, this is based on previous information that the DEP has collected?
Yes.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Anyone else from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Colleen Domingo, 7 Lee Drive. Just had a question about the well testing. Is every house required to do it, or does it have to be a voluntary?
For your well testing?
Yeah.
Unless you're selling your home,
Selling, yeah.
if you're selling your home, yes, you're required
Okay.
to.
Good, thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
That has to be done, that's, regardless of where you live, your house has to, your well has to be tested prior to
To home,
closing
yeah.
anyway, it doesn't matter.
Right, that's in New Jersey.
Right.
That's in New Jersey.
Yeah, it's not,
Or a replacement well also.
Did you want to speak?
That's been around
Yes,
for a
come
while.
forward, please. Please state your name and address.
My name is Alda Copeland. I live in Burlington County. I'm the partnership specialist for the 2020 census. I'm your go-to person. I'm pretty surprised to find Holly here tonight, crossing paths or something.
Excuse me, are you going to, right now we're dealing with the Board of Health.
Well, that's what I thought, that you,
Yeah.
you know, I didn't want
If
to
you have
dismiss my
something,
chance.
we can get you during the.
At the end? Okay,
Yes.
thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything with Bergen County Health Department?
Holly, is there a, you said 26 letters went out. Is that like in one area of Tabernacle, or is that all spread?
It's based upon previous Private Well Testing Act results. So they looked at the areas that had the highest tests, and then they sent it out, the letters out to the neighbors surrounding that home.
Do we,
I'm not allowed to release addresses under the Private Well Testing Act, but what I've asked our GIS to do is to give us a heat map. So it can kind of give you the hot spots in the township without actually giving out the addresses.
is this something we should ask Doug Stewart to?
Doug probably already has
it's already done.
Yeah, he is aware of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
He gets them.
Okay, we're going to close the public portion and have a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're going to reconvene the township committee meeting, and we're going to start off with the public hearing.
Holly, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Alan.
And Holly, you're welcome to leave. You're welcome to stay, but if you
I
like to-
probably will, since I have not been home yet today.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for coming out this evening. Public hearing, 2020 Community Development Application. The Township Committee intends to submit a request to the Bergen County Office of Community Department Block Grant Funds. Prior to submitting its application for funds, Tabernacle Township will conduct this public hearing to afford interest parties the opportunity to comment on the activities in which the township will include in its application for replacement of a wheelchair lift and renovations of bathrooms for ADA compliance in Town Hall municipal building. I'd like to open it to the public. Sean? Anyone from the public that would like to talk about the community development application, please come forward. Mrs. Brooks?
Thank you, Fran Brooks, Morris Meadow Road. What is the total price of this the replacement elevator or the new elevator? What is that gonna be, what is that gonna cost?
The chair lift,
Yeah, the chair lift.
we're looking somewhere probably around 35 to 40,000.
Okay, and is it gonna just be a replacement chair lift? Doctor, you are a doctor.
Doctor.
You're a doctor. You're a doctor of engineering.
Not a doctor. I'm not sure I understand it, but it's going to
Is it gonna be
It's gonna be
just like this?
similar, but-
Similar,
but-
not, it's not like we're getting a box in the house, you know. that you-
We're not building an elevator in, it's gonna be similar to that,
Oh,
just,
got it.
more capable with respect to, the newer wheelchairs. With
Okay.
respect to weight and size.
And what portion would be Tabernacle's portion of it?
So the application would be a grant application for the entire project, including the wheelchair lift and the renovations of the 2 restrooms downstairs. And then depending on what the numbers and the bids came in, township would have the option, you know, if the grant didn't cover the entire amount, then the township would have the option to, expend some local funds to make up the difference.
Okay.
So we're not sure exactly what the grant amount's gonna be, but the grant amount will probably be a little bit less than what we anticipate the total cost to be. But
Okay.
once we know exactly what the grant amount is, then we can fine tune the project if we need to.
Okay, does that mean that the cost of the ADA bathrooms is included in that 35 to 40?
No, that's just for,
That's just for the
you
lift.
just asked for the lift.
What's the cost for the?
So we think the total project is probably gonna be somewhere around $100,000.
Okay, so I just have to subtract, okay, 100K. Okay, that's what I wanted to know, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Rowe.
Sure.
Anyone else in the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on the 2020 Community Development Application. Okay, public comment on agenda items, and ma'am, you can come up first and introduce yourself again.
Okay. I got a little thrown off with my GPS not talking to me tonight.
That's okay.
As I said, I'm a partnership specialist. I'm waiting for another order of business cards, so I have one left.
Okay, can you give it to that young
Yes.
lady down on the
Thank
end?
you.
Thank you.
I have a very short message tonight, even though the census has, excuse me, a lot to say to you. Tonight, I'm here to talk about the jobs. The census desperately needs to hire folks in every community in America. It's an entirely different situation. This is a historic census. It's the first time we're going to be able to respond online. And in support of that, census needs folks in every community to assist with non-response. They need bilingual folks particularly because this is one that the diversity is supposed to encompass everyone. The jobs pay $20 an hour, 20 to 25 an hour, high end if you're bilingual. You set your own hours, you work from home, and you work in the communities where you live. Paid weekly, 58 cents a month, you have to drive. And no resume is needed. It's a 2020 census.gov/jobs website. I'm going to leave this information here so you can use it yourself. It's maybe a 10-minute assessment. You go online to this website. They ask you pretty much, what have you been doing? What would you like to do? It's multiple choice. You answer the questions, and based on that, census decides what best they would have you do. But the bottom line is you'll always be working where you live. Now, the message is the 2020 census is important, it's easy, and it's safe. It's important because $675 billion, the disbursement of that money depends on these numbers. Everything in our lives pretty much is affected by this count, especially the children. The problem with the children is that the ones between 0 and 5 are being undercounted. And when they're not counted now, when they enter school in 5 years, they'll be pulling resources from the children at all. The roads are based on this count. The money appropriated for the roads is based on how many people respond. So if 20% don't respond, the road's not going to last for 10 years, and we'll all be driving on that road. That's pretty much it, I think.
Do you have a link that we could put on our website to the
Yes.
information?
Well, that's the other part. The 2020 census wants to make Tabernacle Township a partner and doing things like we just suggested, portraying a visible support of the 2020 census in any way you can. Probably for a complete count committee, which I will come back and talk to you. Not so many people here. It wouldn't be a public forum. I know there are limitations on how many of you can talk to me at once because I've been doing this since March and it's pretty difficult getting past the rules. Even the freeholders, I'm having trouble getting with them because of the same restriction. But the bottom line is whatever it takes, Census wants to get you on board with a partner. And if you come on board, there's money available. There's grant money available. It was the $7 billion I think the governor talked about in support of the 2020 census. It's all local money. It was a period, I think it ended October 30th, you could apply directly to the state for a $25,000 grant to support your census activities. That time has passed, but you can still apply to the freeholders because they have a big piece of money that they're able to portion out to folks who are really serious about helping with the census.
Could you have information you can leave with us?
I'm going to leave all of this information
Okay,
with
if you would
you.
leave it with Ms. Barber at the end.
Okay.
And what I would suggest is contact our clerk, and possibly you could come in and meet with our administrator, Kramer, our clerk, and if at least one or two of the committee members wanted to participate in that, they could.
Well, this is pretty much the only thing that's political about the census, meeting with leaders because they want you to set an example for everyone else. Okay.
Well, thank you.
I'm here, phone call away.
Thank you for coming this evening.
Well, thank you for having me. And I'm going to put you down for recruiting. You may be interested in complete town committee and anything else I can think of.
Okay.
I can send you a link to get that information on the website.
Okay.
Ms. Barber.
Mrs. Barber, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice night. Okay. Public comment. Anyone from the public?
Thank you.
Sean?
Hey, Sean Colton, 438 Metro Lakes Road. Just wanted to touch on something I saw yesterday. The LoSAP sheet was released for Tabernacle Fire Company. I saw a couple discrepancies, just wanted to bring it up real quick. One thing I thought that was interesting is that out of the 15 people that received the LoSAP, only 6 of them are qualified to go into a burning building, and I'm one of them, actually. And I no longer run the Tabernacle Fire Company. So that just shows you how many qualified people they have running at that organization. Not saying that the other people aren't important facets of that company. There are people there that, you could almost not do without them. Just because you're not interior fireman doesn't mean it just shows that that company is lacking interior firemen. On top of it, also, a couple discrepancies that I saw was there are a couple people, and I'm naming, not all of them know that I'm naming them, but I saw it myself, so I figured I'd bring it up, is Jason Penwell. He, to my knowledge, he may have come slightly short on his calls, but there's no reason that he shouldn't have received his LoSAP because he attended meetings and things like that. There's no reason that that person should have. Same goes for a Chris Kramer. And then the other one that I found really shocking is a Paul Osborne, who isn't even mentioned on this list because I don't know why. He had been a member of the company for a long time, still technically is a member, he just doesn't run there anymore. His name just happens to be affiliated, that's all. So I guess my question is there any sort of accountability for these funds? Is there any sort of record that shows, aside from the people at the Tabernacle Fire Company, that actually shows what these people are doing, what they're being qualified for, and why they're getting this? Because there's some people that are left out that shouldn't be. And the other thing I thought was interesting, some people get paid less than others, and I don't believe it has to do with their certification, because Nicole Johnson, she received 1205, and she has the exact same certification as Oliver Smith. I don't see why she should get any less. There's definitely some discrepancies here. I've seen money problems at that organization before, and this is just another example of it.
Sean, we have a public safety committee.
Okay.
Made up of Committeeman Ward and Deputy Mayor Brown, and they are in the process of looking at the contract with the fire company. Could you share that information with them?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to.
Ask them to take a look at it.
I'll get in touch with you guys via phone. I believe I have your number, so I'll get in touch with the two of you, and I'll be happy to talk to them. Thank you.
Sean, I got a couple of questions for you.
Sure thing.
You mentioned you're no longer with Tabernacle Fire Company?
Correct.
When did you sever your relationship with them?
That would have been early January of 2019. But this is numbers for 2018.
Did you address your issues with Chief Kennard?
I did not. Chief Bernard and I did not have a very friendly outgoing. When I left, it was not exactly I was a little harassed in my personal life from that place. They went after my personal life in many different ways. So I tried to stick to the facts, and I have no interest in talking to them.
Okay. All right, that explains a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, when you go after someone's job and their girlfriend, it kind of...
Okay, thank you, Sean. Anyone else from the public would like to comment on the agenda item? Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Stuart Brooks, Morris Middle Road, regarding resolution 2019, the Oprah resolution. Oprah is 18 years old, Oprah is 45 years old. With so much experience, a 3-year study commission is needed. You say that Oprah has been fraught with abuse and misuse. I'd like to know what abuse and misuse you're talking about in Tabernacle. In the litigation that I know of, Tabernacle has never successfully contended there was abuse or misuse. And in the 2019 consent order, Clerk Barber was required to retract her statement that characterized an Oprah request as harassment. You say Tabernacle has labored under the volume and nature of Oprah requests. The fact is, this committee causes extra work by routinely obstructing transparency, thereby inflicting extra costs on Tabernacle taxpayers. Here are a few examples out of many. For years, you refused to require TRS to submit its insurance billing records for your review, which is required by federal law. Instead, members individually reviewed the records in a backroom private chalkboard presentation. Ms. Brown confirmed this process was designed to leave no public records. Yes, you did. After exposure of the chalkboard scandal, the committee hid the TRS billing records in the emergency operations plan. That generated Oprah litigation, and the requester prevailed. There was litigation over public documents concerning a trailer hookup to a 75-year-old uninspected cesspool. You bypassed township ordinances and state law to adopt an illegal resolution to allow the hookup. After the litigation, you rescinded the resolution. Tabernacle released that letter requesting the hookup, causing further litigation. Again, the requester prevailed, and a township employee was assessed a penalty for knowingly and willfully withholding public documents. Penalties are virtually unheard of in Oprah cases, but it happened here. You call attention to your cost to review and process Oprah requests. I worked for 10 years and handled hundreds of Oprah requests, and I address these from the perspective of how can I provide public access. Tabernacle seems to start from the perspective, as my examples show, of how can we restrict access. I never incurred costs like you have, and nor do other townships which really support open government. Last, the resolution's count of Oprah requests is wrong. In 2017, it says you had 205 Oprah requests, but the clerk log says you have 96. In 2018, it says you had 251, but the clerk log says you have 88. In 2019, it says you had 282 Oprah requests, clerk log says you have 143. These errors were previously pointed out to you. You haven't corrected them. You need to correct them here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Anyone else in the public? Mr. Brooks?
Brian Brooks, Morris Meadow Road. I actually want to speak about the clerk's resolution. In your whereas, your 10th whereas says that you pay disproportionate attorney fees. My attorney has always reduced his fees. Mr. Lang never does reduce his fees. And on top of it, his bills are totally opaque, neither transparent or open, in spite of the fact that he always insists that he and the committee believe in transparency, and yet there's no transparency with his bills that would be in conformance with the Records Act. You also say that you're concerned about privacy. I regularly receive documents from the clerk where she hasn't redacted bank account numbers, telephone numbers, and email addresses. The township can't cry concern about privacy when the clerk's work is sloppy and indifferent to the privacy issue. Another whereas, you count the number of hours spent responding to Oprah requests. These numbers are as unreliable and likely misleading as the number of Oprah requests that are cited in the resolution that is before you. And what, after all, is the basis of your numbers? You also list the additional attorney costs the township has incurred. These numbers are highly questionable. Based on your Oprah request logs, the records requested are all conventional. I reviewed your logs. These records are all conventional public records and conventional documents, and they shouldn't really require any attorney review. And again, Mr. Lang's bills are totally opaque and unreliable, and it's impossible to know what he's actually charging for. In the whereases about the study commission, it's absurd that there should be a study commission. The League and Clerks Association have been lobbying Senator Weinberg and other legislators for 6 years. Now, after 20 years of Oprah experience and 45 years of Meetings Act experience, the League and Clerks Association know full well what the issues are. They don't need any more study, okay? Your support for a 3-year study commission should be placed in light of statements that Ms. Brown and Mr. Moore made regarding the fire company contract, where they didn't want to extend, you didn't want to extend the time at all. You wanted immediate discussion, you wanted to get the contract done, and you emphasized the importance of taking prompt action and no delay, but yet you're willing to support a 3-year study commission on laws that have been around for 20 and 45 years. So it's a little bit absurd, and this contradiction is not lost on the public, believe me. Finally, by parroting a lobbyist statement, and I have one more point to make, your ignorance of the reform legislation is on display. And by the way, number 7, the provision number 7, may violate the consent order that was handed down by Judge Bookbinder before he retired. And I would recommend that you take a look at the language that you have in this provision 7 in the resolution, because there might be a violation of the consent order. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Brooks. Anyone else from the public like to comment on agenda items? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion. And resolutions. Resolution 2019-118, authorize the placement of temporary signs in the right-of-way for the Seneca Band Parents Craft Fair. Have a motion? Second? Second. Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2019-119, authorized resolution calling for a study commission to review the Open Public Records Act. Have a motion?
I'm going to make a motion, I have a comment.
Second?
Second.
Everybody waiting.
This particular topic is something that I had conversations with our legislators about probably 4 years ago. I don't know if it's the answer, but I will say that I think it makes sense to at least look at it. It's not something that should be taken lightly. I think we've learned a lot in terms of what Oprah is designed to do, and we've also learned a lot about what Oprah was probably not designed to do. So this is something that I think is probably a long time coming, although I will be quick to say, I don't know if this is what the actual solution is going to be long term, but I'm pleased that at least we're going to support it being looked at. But I will say I think there's a lot of value in Oprah. I think there's a lot of value to open public records, and that it's very, very important for the public to have access to what goes on in government. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Peter, did you want to make a comment?
Just in general terms, obviously, contrary to the Brooks' assertion, I think that the committee and the clerk especially has demonstrated a desire to provide transparent and open government. And they've repeatedly done so in the face of competing authority and unknowns concerning how the statute would be interpreted or otherwise. So I think the good faith effort of the clerk and this committee has often resulted in sometimes a perverted result in that it ends up costing the township taxpayers a significant amount of money to determine questions that are not readily resolved. And with the fee shifting mechanism that's included in the statute, it becomes very difficult and risky, quite frankly, for the township committee to decide to make a good faith decision that might not be in accordance with the requester's demands. And so it puts the township and the clerk in a tough spot. We had major litigation concerning the farmland assessment information and financial information that is relative to farmers. The committee made a decision to act in good faith and say, hey, the statute talks about exceptions for financial information. And we, in good conscience at the time, felt that that information should be protected to the benefit of the farmers. And that wasn't the intent and purpose of the statute to require that such information be provided. In the course of that litigation, as it was ultimately resolved by the court on other grounds, the information was ordered to be produced. The court decided it on other grounds, and even though the township acted clearly in good faith, doesn't have an axe to grind or just wants to follow the law, ends up being burdened with substantial fees because of the court ultimately finding that that information had to be provided.
Can you explain why? Why it was
well, in that particular instance, it was because the judge decided that the estate was not a person within the meaning of the Open Public Records Act, and indicated that the information needed to be provided because the exclusion didn't apply. And again, that was something that neither attorney really had their eye on, but that's what ultimately caused the court to rule the way it did. My point is that the clerk and the committee acted in good faith and ended up being exposed to substantial fees to find out what the answer is, essentially. The same could be said with respect to the litigation concerning rosters. The committee had a legitimate concern that these people would be exposed to nefarious purposes of individuals that had that information. Of course, there's a legitimate debate there as to whether or not other entities provide that information. But the committee acted in good faith. The clerk acted in good faith. The colonel acted in good faith. And we ultimately litigated that, only to find that subsequently things were changing at the Department of Emergency Management and at the JIF, and that those rosters were going to have to be provided to the JIF, provided to the township, and would thereby conclusively be a public document. So again, the township acted in good faith, tried to do the right thing, and was exposed to significant fees to get the answer, to find out from the courts what it is that they have to do. But again, the idea that they are somehow trying to avoid public review, to hide the activity, I just reject that offhand. There's never been any evidence of that. The committee has always acted in good faith, always recognized the benefit of open government and transparency. No one, I think, up here has any different feeling other than, yet, of course, we want to be transparent and open. But when you're confronted with specific issues under a statute where there aren't specific answers because not every little nuance has been litigated, not every fact pattern has been litigated, you could be acting in good faith and exposed to substantial fees. Also, the public's familiarity with Oprah has grown substantially, which is a good thing. But under the current requirements, it's extremely burdensome to the clerk's office from a cost standpoint, from a manpower standpoint. And those issues are compounded with the public's familiarity, willingness, utilization of their rights, which again is welcome and invited, but it has an impact, and it has a substantial impact on how the township operates. So I think that the broad characterization that the clerk, especially with Sean, who works diligently to do her level best to provide in good faith responses in a timely way after performing thorough review of the records and does a great job, quite frankly, in doing so. The idea that her or the committee is somehow has a difficulty in accepting what it means to be transparent and to provide open government, again, I just reject that offhand. There are instances where there has been issues that were raised and resolved by the court, and given the harsh cost-shifting mechanisms included in the statute, it can have an unintended result, I think. And in fact, oftentimes, a decision is made to provide documentation that otherwise maybe shouldn't be. But again, the clerks and the township committees are left in a position of, well, do we litigate that? If the attorney says, well, I'm not sure whether it's going to come out, or I'm not sure whether or not it fits into the exceptions for legitimate reasons. Obviously, if there isn't compelling justifications for not providing a document, then it should be provided, obviously. But if there is a compelling justification under the law and the express exceptions, clerks and committees are left in a position of saying, do we exercise our right and potentially be the subject of having to pay the requester's fees just to get the answer, or do we just shirk our responsibility to determine whether or not it should be produced or protected, and take the path of least resistance and not subject yourself to the potential for such great costs? So there's a lot going on with Oprah. It's laudable purposes. We've been a leader across the country in the United States with respect to open government, transparency. There's a significant debate going on over freedom of speech and how that interacts with these statutes. And again, these are areas that are in need of further refinement and visiting the issue as a whole, so that the language of the statute can be fashioned in such a way that it's fair to everybody concerned, especially taxpayers in individual towns, and also promotes its laudable purpose of transparency and open government. So I think the Clerks Association, or the Department of Community Affairs, has prepared a model resolution which they are attempting to incorporate the full breadth of the experience statewide, and which we have inserted some local information and some statistics concerning our own experience with the statute. So I think that LaShawn very much would like the committee to support this resolution. I would myself as well, because I think that study, a review, a comprehensive look at the statute, its mechanisms, its effects, its goals, its purposes, is overdue to some refinement and some reconsideration potentially by the legislature. And that's essentially what this resolution, if adopted, would point out to the legislature.
Thank you, Peter. Any other one from the
I have
committee?
2 questions.
Yes.
Number 1, Mrs. Brooks brought up that she believes there's language in here that's incorrect and shouldn't be put in there because of an agreement.
She said section 7. I'm struggling to find what she's referencing.
And then my second question is for LaShawn. They also brought up the question of your statistics on your information. I'm going to ask you if your information is correct.
What'd you say?
They brought up information that LaShawn said there's so many number of Oprah requests, however, that was that one.
That was the second one.
I wanted to know if LaShawn's information is correct.
Fran, you had indicated a section 7. Could you
Right,
clarify?
well, it's whereas number 7, so if you were to count each whereas, if I count it correctly.
That was the bottom of
The 7th one has no stats.
Yeah, it has, no, it's, number 7 is the clerk's office is staffed with 2 full-time employees. This sentence comes out of the statement that was originally on the website that under the consent order had to be removed. So to, at least minimally in the spirit of the law, in the spirit of the revision or withdrawal, that language should probably not be in this resolution. And 2, you might have trouble with the consent, there might actually be a violation, and that's a legal determination, but I'm just bringing it up to your...
Be specific about the violation you're accusing us of?
I'm just saying that there may be a violation.
In what specific?
Mark, just settle in, see if she's okay.
I'm fine, she's fine.
I think she can speak for herself. She,
I'm also her colleague,
it's
and we
the-
continue to move forward.
the,
I'm waiting for your answer.
So this is.
Whereas number 7 states Tabernacle's municipal clerk's office is staffed with 2 full-time employees, and depending on vacation training and the attendance of other departments, the office may only have 1 employee available to perform these functions. That was a provision that was on the website statement that depicted Oprah as harassment, which the clerk had to withdraw. You know, she discussed it in depositions and ultimately had to withdraw it as part of the consent order. And all I'm raising to you is that, and at a minimum, in the spirit of the consent order, the determination of the consent order, that sentence shouldn't appear in this resolution, since it had to be withdrawn from the website. And indeed, it's very possible, I'm not saying that it is, I'm just saying may actually violate the consent order. So that's the only, I just raised that issue for your edification. And so that was, does that answer your question?
Thank you, Mrs. Brooks.
Okay, you're welcome.
So if that's my, just follow up with my question.
Yes.
No.
Done?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're good. If this is a factual statement, if in fact there are 2 full-time employees, and depending on whether they're on vacation or not, or in other meetings, that there's only 1 employee, does that violate the consent order if you're stating a fact that this is what's there?
First of all, I'd like to say that Mr. and Mrs. Brooks have both indicated that the township was compelled to remove language from its website concerning Oprah. And that's just a misstatement of fact. The court didn't require that at all. The court didn't rule on that in any fashion. We simply agreed to do it so that we could get the suit over with, since the township was spending thousands of dollars to deal with it. And so rather than quarrel about some inconsequential language on the website, we just agreed so that we would be done with the case, and that then the clerk agreed to, in I think, a good faith fashion again, to say, okay, fine, if they find that to be objectionable, we'll go ahead and remove it, just because we don't want this to hold up any settlement in the matter. But there was no legal obligation, the court didn't order it, and ultimately, if we had tried the matter to conclusion, we would not have been compelled to modify the statute, I don't believe. I don't even think there's really a close call in that regard. So to characterize the good faith effort to resolve the matter in an amicable fashion and mischaracterize that, I think is unfortunate and inappropriate. And again, it just I think demonstrates an absolute unwillingness to recognize at all any of the good faith efforts of the clerk or the committee to take care of what their responsibilities are under the statute. So it wasn't ordered by the judge. And to the extent that it's a statement of fact and a whereas included in the resolution, the idea that it would be a violation of the consent order, I don't believe is even a close call. And if the clerk believes that it's accurately factual, which I believe it is, then I don't see any risk at all associated with keeping it in the resolution.
So Peter, this resolution is being distributed to a list of legislators and organizations, right? So we are basically telling them factual information about Tabernacle Township.
And why they should consider studying these 2 statutes and giving it a good look.
Basically, we're just saying that we normally have 2, but there's a possibility there may only be 1.
Because of the volume. It's not related necessarily to Mr. or Mrs. Brooks's or Mrs. Brooks's Oprah request, but just in general, the volume of Oprah requests, and it's a question of resources, and I think that's all it's trying to point out.
The one thing to keep in mind is that this isn't about Tabernacle. This is about looking at Oprah across the board. And Kim had raised the question already, and I don't know if we have an answer at this point or not, but the stats on the page 2 of 3, and the one I'm looking at, I think there was some comments that Mrs. Brooks had made regarding the accuracy of these numbers. And I think the only thing that we would need to do is to double check those and ensure they're accurate before this is memorialized. But the thing to keep in mind is this isn't about Tabernacle's experiences. This is about specifically looking at a 20-year-old law and asking our legislators and asking our lawmakers at the next level to look at it, which I think is a responsible thing to do. I think the components here about Tabernacle give us a little bit of a screenshot, or those who are not familiar with Tabernacle, a screenshot of what we've been dealing with. And if there's inaccuracies about it, then fine, we get them fixed. But I clearly think this is an important thing to do. And I will say this, when I went to the 8th District legislators and met with them about this, the concern that they had was pushback to say that the public, people would be concerned that the public isn't getting all that they're entitled to. Well, that's not what this is about. This is about trying to economically be able to survive while having to fulfill the needs of the public, which I think is a balance. But we got to keep our eye on the ball in terms of what this is really about. This is about looking at Oprah. And the components in it that have to do with Tabernacle are components we've been dealing with here. Provided they're accurate, I think we continue to push this forward, and I'm glad that we're doing it. And it's something that should have happened probably a long time ago. And we're not the only municipality that's dealing with this. That's for sure.
Being in support of this resolution is not being against Oprah. That's the way it wants to be casted, that, because you want the legislature to take a look at a statute that affects principally how you operate a local government, I don't see how that's a negative.
And that's outlined in this. That's clearly outlined in this.
What are they afraid that they're going to find? That there is abuses, that there is problems, that it is too costly on the state and its employees and the 557 municipalities? If those that are in favor of open government are truly in favor of open government, then they would also, I would think, be in favor of a fair and impartial review of the regulations, given that breadth of experience to date.
Are we still in public comment?
No.
Agenda items?
No, we're done. We're going through the
I'm going
agenda.
to call a vote.
Well, wait, I want LaShawn to address my question.
The numbers are correct?
The numbers are correct.
The numbers are correct. The numbers include multiple items contained within one single Oprah request.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second, and any other comment from the committee? We have a roll call.
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lady?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2019-120, budget transfers. Ronnie, you want to review these, or let me get a motion and a second, and then we'll ask Rodney to just briefly go over the budget transfers. Have a motion for 2019-120.
So moved.
So,
Okay. Rodney, would you like to explain the budget?
yeah, basically, in reviewing the budget and to make it through the end of the year, there's 3 line items that need funds. Obviously, the bond registrar's minor is $50, but engineering services and public safety fire OE needs engineering. We're estimating $12,000 to get through the end of the year, and the fire OE of $13,000. That is predominantly to basically handle servicing and maintenance on the trucks. So we have one with an antifreeze leak now, and the other is a truck that has not been serviced yet this year. So the money's coming from, the $50 is coming out of the finance OE budget. We did have monies available in the workers' comp insurance of 19 grand because rates came in less than what we had budgeted. And the public safety fire salaries, since we have not had a public safety director for the year, those funds were basically available to be able to be moved.
Rodney, which trucks are getting repaired?
4314 and 4312. The bigger expense is 14.
Any questions from the committee? Okay, roll call.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Gates?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes. The next three resolutions I'm going to introduce together, and we'll have our engineer, once we have a motion and a second explaining each of the three, they all have to do with the same development. The first resolution is 2019-121, which is a reduction in the bond for Section 1 of the Grande at Tabernacle. Resolution 2019-122 for the same developer is for Section 2. And Resolution 121-123 for the same developer is for the road widening of the project. We got a motion?
You're asking to move them all at one time, is that
All
right?
one time, yes.
And then get an explanation on all three?
Mhm.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it, but I'd like, why we widen the road?
Dave, you want to go over the three line?
Sure, this is for the Grand Tabernacle, the Haas property on Medford Lakes Road. Part of the, to answer your question, Mr. Lee, initially, the road widening is a separate bond, and that's worked within Medford Lakes Road. And there was a little bit of modifications to the roadway and the storm sewer system there, so that was bonded separately. And that's part of the development approval for that property. So the performance bond for that work was $119,928, and of that, about a little over 41% is complete. So we're recommending a reduction down to $49,398. So it's still under performance bond. They still have to finish the work there. It's not a substantial widening. It's just some shoulder work and the other work within the right of way there. The other two resolutions. 121 is for Section 1, which is the initial section when you come into development. Again, this is just for development work that's been completed to date. The original bond amount was a little over $677,000, and we're recommending a reduction to $245,785. And then the last resolution, which is 22, is for Section 2 of the exact same development. The original cost of the bond was $725,000 and change. And we're recommending a reduction of $584,000 and change. Basically, the development work itself, the roads, the site improvements have all been being worked on in anticipation of a separate builder coming in and starting to build homes in the development. So all the performance bonds will remain in place. The work is not done. It's just this is a progress. And by reducing the bond amount, it allows the developer to save on the bonding costs.
Well, and statutorily, they're entitled to the reduction if, in the opinion of the engineer, the work in place has been performed, and therefore that exposure is reduced.
Correct. And they have been working steadily on this project at this point after sitting idle for many years, as you're all aware.
The contractor or Haas?
Haas is doing all of the site work for the development, and then selling the lots to a builder who is going to be building the houses.
Are they selling to the developer on a lot-by-lot basis?
Well, they're selling it by the section, so they're selling all the lots in Section 1, and it's, I don't know for sure, but it looks like that Section 2 will also be bought by the same builder to build those houses. But it's not individual builders, it's one builder for Section 1, and I believe the second builder is probably going to get Section 2 as well.
So they're different builders or they're not?
Same builder. Just that the builder is just doing the houses and the lots. Haas is retaining all the development work itself, the roads, the grading, drainage.
Now, as far as final paving on the road itself, are you requiring Haas to do that per section?
They're gonna have to complete all the paving, and until they do, the performance bond will be in place to make sure that they do that.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is because historically, a builder comes in as you know, puts in the road, puts in a base coat, and then you have the manhole covers and everything else sticking up about 2.5 inches off the road.
Yes.
And they wait until the development is 100% complete before they do final pave.
Correct.
This could take 20 years.
My impression is it's not gonna take 20 years. They have a big builder who's coming in that's gonna build these houses, and they wanna move right through. If it's gonna extend out, we could require them at some point to go ahead and put that top coat paving on. They are gonna install temporary cul-de-sacs at any dead ends. So there is a procedure in place for that. But the top paving of section 1, which is in the front, there could be homes that are occupied prior to the top paving being done, yes.
Well, my concern is that they're gonna come to us because the minute a homeowner moves in, they're paying taxes. And they're gonna come to us and say, we widen our road paved.
Well, the road will be just base
Because-
paved,
because-
and that's not really that unusual in development.
Well, what I'm getting at is that if they're going, you know, to do the performance in sections,
Yes.
we should require them to pave, do top coat. Because once they turn that section over, correct me if I'm wrong, but now the onus falls on the township.
No, they're required, they're gonna be required to pave it, and we're not releasing the performance
Well,
bond.
you have a snow removal.
Until the performance bond is completely released and the township accepts the roads, it's the responsibility of the developer for all maintenance and snow removal on those roads. And then afterwards, when the performance bond is released, the maintenance bond will be in place. So they'll be on the hook for 2 years of maintenance, but snow removal will be the responsibility of the township at that point. So for as long as they don't top pave and finish out that section, whichever section it is, they'll be responsible for snow removal and ongoing maintenance.
So to Joe's point, Dave, is there a way, I know that the Land Development Board allowed them to cut it up, I believe, into 3 sections, right?
Yes.
Is there a way that they could be mandated to finish the paving of section 1 before they can start on section 2? As far as selling
As
homes?
far as selling homes,
In other words, once section 1 is completely sold out, is there a mechanism that we could get section 1 paved?
we could try to get them to do that. I don't know legally if, we'd have to look into that, whether we can compel them to do that.
Only if the approval did, right?
Don't reduce the bond.
But again, there's
That's
also the
leverage.
issue of, you know, is it potentially that top coat is then gonna have construction traffic on top of it?
Right.
And so, you know, that's a legitimate concern of the developer, so I understand what Mr. Yates is saying. He's saying, you know, people are gonna move in, they're gonna want a finished road, we know that, right?
Oh, and, you know, I'm taking it they're gonna be one section's gonna be high-end homes. I'm assuming.
I don't know exactly the range that they're building there.
All I know is that if I had a Corvette, I'd be darned if I want to drive on a road that I can't see where that manhole cover is.
Are you speaking from personal experience? The thing that you don't want to get stuck with is selling a section, and then something happens and the builder goes bankrupt. I mean, D. Horton was there. D. Horton is nothing to sneeze at, and they couldn't sell houses. Bud Court, I was on the land development board when we approved that 12 years ago, whatever it was. And yeah, the builder ran out of money, and that thing sat unpaved for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Something
Well,
like
here's what I'd say, the performance bonds are there to protect municipalities against just that issue.
Yeah, in Bud Court, we pulled the bond and they paid.
Right.
But that took a lot of work.
We could have done it much earlier than that, but it did take a lot of work.
Yeah.
I mean, to be diligent, if we see it going down that path, then we have to notify the bonding company immediately, and I've been through it before, and it doesn't take long periods of time, it just takes a little bit of effort to get them down there, but the bonding companies are on the hook for it, and that's why we have the bond in place.
I mean, I agree with Joe. I mean, think about this for a second. If you're trying to sell houses in section 2, why do you want to go across to a base coat to go look at, I think it's stupid, but that's just me.
But it's pretty typical.
Yeah, I understand that, doesn't mean it's right. Eastbound on Medford Lakes Road, is there a left turn signal going, or left turn lane going into that development?
No. No.
But this doesn't call for that, does it?
No.
Okay.
But again, these resolutions don't impact the things that you've legitimately identified as concerns. These resolutions reflect what's already in place.
The only thing I'll say to you, Dan, is that at some point, when you get a lot of housing there, you may want a left turn lane coming from Medford Lakes. If you don't have it now, you're going to want it someday.
That die is cast.
It is. It was part of the original land use approvals for that development, which are now probably 15 years old.
Easily.
Right now, Dan, I should say there are times where it's extremely hard to get out of Prickett's Mill on the Medford Lakes Road. So if you're coming off of Prickett's Mill out of, let's say, Eagles Mill, and you need to go left, and you have two cars that are trying to turn left into this new development, you're not getting out.
I understand. Unfortunately, this was approved many years ago and then reaffirmed by land use board with, the only change was really breaking out the sections. And that was probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Dan, didn't it have a decel lane coming out of the development?
I think it does on the decel. That's part of the widening. I think both sides get a little bit of widening there so that there's room. So although not a left-hand turn lane, there is room to pass.
Because I know the road was wide there, but the utilities were never moved back, I don't think. I think the poles are still up there.
Yeah, they're still waiting for Verizon.
Okay. So coming out there will be a decel coming out, heading.
And so the road will be
heading
widened so
west.
that there's room for passing, basically.
Any other questions on resolution 2019, 121, 122, and 123?
Myself, and dedication now for myself, I think you should revisit this as far as possibly going back to the contractor and discussing it before you approve any reduction. And
Well, again, this is for work that's already been done and reductions that they're entitled to by municipal land use law.
Also, Dan, if Haas was to complete the pavement in section 1, he gets another reduction for that, right?
Yes, he can complete all of section 1, and once all the work in section 1 is done and accepted, then they can get off release the performance bond, but they have to post a maintenance bond.
But I think that becomes a bigger problem, because if you're accepting one section and you have other people.
Construction traffic going through it.
Construction traffic coming through, you run the risk of having problems with the road, and then you get into snow removal, and then you get people moving into the other section, and we're removing part of one section because we took that road over, but not the other section.
Correct.
That's gonna be a bigger problem.
well, the reason
It's like
why
shoving your tail.
Ms. Brown, the reason why contractors ask for this and request it, okay, and that's just to put the base coat down and not to finish the road as the project progresses, is exactly what Dan just stated. You still have a maintenance bond. Well, what's going to happen is the road's going to get damaged with trucks going in and out of there, making deliveries, dump trucks, everything else going in and out. So the drainage paving is going to get damaged. There's no doubt about it. Okay, but if I was buying a home in there, I would want the road finished.
No, the only thing I'm saying is, if in fact we take the road, say they complete section 1, we take section 1, they're working on section 2, we don't have that section. People start moving in there. We're plowing section 1. We're not obligated to plow section 2 because we haven't taken that road.
This is true.
That would be a problem for us.
But the residents are not going to be worried about who the road belongs to. If I'm living in section 2 and all of section 2 is not done yet, I'm going to be calling Doug and want to know why my road's not paved.
That's the point I'm making. That's exactly what I just said. So the bottom line is, they're entitled to this because it's work that's already finished. That's
That's
the bottom
correct.
line.
That's correct.
Any other questions?
Doesn't mean you have to give it to them.
And if we don't,
You could get sued.
that was really good, I saw three heads all at the same time. I just thought I'd ask the
We're used to
question.
that.
Roll call.
We don't want that.
Ms. Brown?
Understanding what Mr. Yates said and completely supporting Mr. Yates, but knowing the other side of the coin, if I say no, yes.
Mr. Lee?
No.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
No.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2019-124, authorizing payment for the LoSAP contribution for 2018 for Tabernacle Fire Company Number 1. Have a motion?
Can I make a motion to table so we get the answers to these questions? Can we do that now? Does it affect them if we don't? If we
We can do another ordinance next, resolution next month to add in the aid of that, rather than hold the contributions to the existing members.
Okay, I just want to make sure because questions were brought up.
We're allowed to have more one resolution
Okay,
a year. so.
all right. If that's the case, then, okay, I'll make the motion to move forward.
A second?
Second.
A roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
He's indisposed.
Oh.
Step down from him.
Yes.
He'll be back.
Thank you.
Resolution 2019-125, submission of application for the CDBG funding for replacement of wheelchair lift and renovations of bathrooms for ADA compliance in town hall.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Mayor, I got a comment or two. This is application only, so it's not like we're married to this, but how have we been able to survive with the bathrooms the way they are up until now?
The bathrooms function now, they're not compliant.
And once you renovate them, they have to become compliant.
Well, the purpose of renovation is to make them compliant.
So what prompted the project?
Because the Community Development Block Grant Program is very sort of a, the basis for it is your census and your socioeconomic census tract. We have nothing in town that no areas of town that would be eligible for any grant funding. So the second tier would be to go to removal of architectural barriers, which are basically ADA improvements on municipal property. Last go around, we did the ramp out front here in the municipal building. And so we looked around at other projects that would be needed to alleviate those architectural barriers, and that's how we came up with the wheelchair lift again and the bathrooms downstairs.
So it would be, the grant itself could be utilized for essentially any municipal property.
Yeah, but specific to removal of existing architectural barriers and existing facilities that are not ADA compliant.
Okay, I'm just going to raise this with the committee. Obviously, it's going to happen at some point in the future, but I think $100,000 is an awful lot to spend on bathroom renovation and a chair lift when we have municipal property, i.e. the building on Hawkins Road, that's still, there hasn't been any decisions made by this committee in terms of what's happening. I think $100,000 is an awful lot to spend when there doesn't seem to be a firm plan in terms of utilization of buildings that belong to the public. I've made it pretty clear that I think there ought to be some sort of a long-range plan. This committee hasn't taken action on that at all. I'm kind of disappointed in that, but as I said, I'm coming off in December, and it'll be the job of the folks that are in the back of the room and the three folks sitting here, but I firmly believe that this committee needs to take a very proactive approach And when it comes to facilities of the municipality, because $100,000 in a building, I keep coming back to Bob Perry's analogy of this building. He always said that when you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. And we've done an awful lot of work to this building, and it's in much better shape than it was when I got here 9 years ago. But this committee needs to take responsibility when it comes to facilities that belong to the taxpayer and what we're going to do with them. And that includes every property that's owned by the taxpayer.
And Stephen, to your point, I believe that this committee did make a vote to put on the market the Hawkins Road facility, and the administrator asked that we have time to look at the flooding on Hawkins Road with the fire company, and he thought that maybe a part of that parcel, am I correct, Doug, would be needed? Yes. For some drainage, and sounds like we have to move forward with that. Where is that, Doug, with all the other drainage work you're doing? Is that on your agenda?
That's on our agenda. Dan's been working on trying to get a seasonal high water table level down there that we can actually test. Because of all the flooding this past year, we've dealt with an extremely high water table that when we dig to do the testing, we have water in. So we're hoping that sometime early next year that we might be able to actually get a boring that can give us the marbling that we need to look at to know what we can do.
So we're working on that. We did have some other drainage projects that, as you're aware, kind of popped up that needed to be dealt with right away. But I think the flexibility there is we have a piece of property there in an area where we do have a significant drainage problem. One of the basin at the plaza, Yates Plaza there, is being renovated by the developer there as a condition of a land use approval that they got, which we hope will alleviate some of the issues. But it's a larger project than that. I mean, it's a larger problem.
Yeah. Dan, I know at Land Development Board, that change of use of the Yates Plaza came before the board, and I believe part of the resolution included maintaining those two.
That's correct. Well, the basin that's theirs, which is the
Right.
basin on the I guess it'd be the east side of their driveway is their basin, and then the other basin, which is the larger kind of shallow basin, that was done as part of the improvements to the intersection there way back.
Is that our basin?
15 years ago. Doug and I have had that conversation. It's
Maybe DOTs?
It's DOTs or it's ours, but we're trying to figure that out.
But to be clear, a drainage problem at a particular property or a drainage issue or samples in next year are not obstacles for this committee to determine what the space needs are. That's all I'm trying to communicate to the committee. Those are interesting facts, but it does not prevent the committee from having a long-term plan for facilities that belong to the taxpayer.
Okay, any more discussion on resolution 2019-125?
This is an opportunity we get only once every other year. The way the grants are handed out by the county is your position in the alphabet of the towns, and lower half of the alphabet is 2020, and even years and probably on odd years for the application. Both of these projects, no matter what this building ends up being used for down the road, would be assets to it. There would be a chairlift to get up here that is capable of handling larger wheelchairs, or that the bathrooms meet the current ADA requirements. So whether this is used community center or continues as a township office or a portion of the township offices are here, it is still a project that is capable of supporting this building.
And if the local component is too great,
they can choose not to go forward.
This is correct.
Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Just a comment first. This is just to authorize going forward with the submission of the application for this grant. It's not binding us to the grant. Being proactive going forward, trying to bring the building in ADA compliance also protects the township against possible ADA non-compliant lawsuits.
That's correct.
So that's also important too, given right now this is the hub of our township building and where we do our business. So yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Okay, approval of the bills, a motion?
I'll make the motion, but I have a question.
Okay, second.
I'll second it.
Question. Are pets allowed in the parks?
What's your question, Kim?
Are pets allowed in the parks, dogs? I
They're
thought they
allowed.
were not,
Not on the athletic fields.
not on the athletic fields, okay. That answers my question.
Any other questions from the committee on the bills? Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Yates? Mayor Barton?
Yes. Approval of minutes for October 28, 2019, regular and closed session. A motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Mr. Moore, you were absent. Okay, roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes, I left after executive session, but it's my understanding nothing happened after the
That is
executive
correct.
session.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Abstain.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Reports, Doug, you're going to go first, Doug. I know you may have an emergency at home. It may come up, so hopefully that does not transpire. If it does, you are excused.
Just to bring everybody up to speed, the radar speed signs are up on Lee Drive. They've been up for a little less than a week, and it will be left up there for a little while longer before we move on to another street. Flyett Road is complete and opened. The drainage on Richter and Moore and also on Old Indian Mills are progressing. Dan can probably finish up on where we are exactly on those two projects. And pipe work on Carranza Road was started today and is progressing. As I hope everybody would notice, the gazebo is complete. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Evan Falk for the landscaping he did as his Eagle Scout project. And I'm hoping that we can provide him some type of proclamation in the next week.
When it gets his award. Doug, that'll probably come when it gets his Eagle Award.
Yes. Thank you.
Dan?
All right, Mr. Kramer stole some of my thunder, but I'll just review real quick. As he stated, the pipe crossing on Carranza Road, that was actually last year's road program. There was some grant money left over, and we knew that, as we move forward in the hopes of paving Carranza Road, that pipe crossing was going to need to be taken care of. So that's being done this week, and we're hoping they'll be able to do the related paving work immediately following that, possibly this week, but this is a short week. Drainage projects, Old Indian Mills Road, Richter and Moore is wrapping up, and we're hoping the paving again on that will be done this week or the early part of next week. Flat road work, as Doug stated, is finished. We are there was a pipe collapse at Old Indian Mills Road. Again, that's we were able to get some pricing from contractors on that for the replacement, and we're waiting on a schedule of that. We'll get that scheduled as soon as possible so we can get that taken care of as well before any weather sets in. And that's basically what I had.
Thank you, Dan. Peter?
on there. I do have the executive session, but I do have another item, a couple items. Number one, Mr. Lee had requested me to research whether or not the admission of a firefighter to the company resulted in, or whether or not there was a necessity for some type of action by the committee to admit into membership a member of the fire company into the New Jersey Firemen's Association. A couple days after that meeting, I did send out an email and indicated and provided the authority to indicate that no, the township does not have to take any specific action, that by virtue of their admission into the fire company, they're automatically a member of the New Jersey Firemen's Association without any action, official or otherwise, by the township committee. So that should be clear, and I provided that email opinion a couple days after the meeting. Back in July, the township committee received a request from an attorney on behalf of the owner of Allenwood, requesting that the township consider certain zoning ordinance modifications with respect to the age-restricted requirements associated with that mobile home facility. And essentially, they had asked that the committee make a couple of changes that would not prevent that from lawfully being an age-restricted community because there are federal housing issues there. But rather than be focused on really the federal issues, they're focused on some practical issues concerning their operation. And they asked that the committee adopt some changes that would ameliorate the restriction concerning age-restricted residents at the facility. So that would have constituted a zoning change, any change in that regard. So it was sent to the Land Development Board, I thought for a general discussion as to the merit of it or what their thoughts might be. But I did receive a Section 26 referral where they did conduct a formal Section 26 hearing on the proposed changes and commented concerning their thoughts. And we did get an October 28th letter from the LDB through Mr. Frank that detailed the LDB's concerns. So I can go over the specific changes and the recommendations of the board. They're pretty clear in the letter that were provided, where the board felt that while there really wasn't any consistency determination to make, given that your master plan doesn't really provide any senior housing element, that they did make some general comments concerning the requested modifications. For example, they asked that you add a section in the ordinance that would provide that a husband and wife under 55 who is residing with his or her spouse who is age 55 or over, that be permitted, even if the spouse is under 55. There was no specific recommendation from the LDB on that. They asked that the ordinance be modified to indicate that adults under 55 years of age, if it is established that the presence of such person is essential, that is someone under 55, for that physical care of other occupants which are age qualified, that be permitted. And the board felt that that was appropriate and asked the committee to consider making that change. Likewise, the board felt that the requested change indicating that adults under 55 years of age who because of physical or mental disability are dependent upon and are under the supervision and care of the occupant or occupants of the age of 55 years or older, where it is established that it is essential that such individuals reside with those occupants. So basically adult care is what they're seeking to modify the ordinance to allow, and they do suggest that the committee should accept that recommendation. With respect to item D, wherein they suggested language that would sort of grandfather the people that apparently are in there and which their occupancy is violative of the age restrictions, that there be some type of grandfather clause, and the LDB didn't feel that that was appropriate. They indicated that the owner ought to have to deal with that, given that that eventuality is as a result of their business practice as opposed to anything that the township did. They suggest that you should add or consider adding to the ordinance that in no event may persons under the age of 21 be permitted to occupy the mobile home, that caretakers are not permitted permanent tenants and must maintain another permanent address. In the event of the passing of the tenant, caretakers will have 90 days to vacate the mobile home, again protecting against the purposes and intent of the age restriction as it was originally written. And they also submit that there should be some rules and regulations that should be developed potentially on how to administer these caretaking exceptions should the committee decide to move in that direction. So I think, and I'm inviting a general discussion among the committee on where you want to go with this. You could take some time to think about it, review these materials more specifically. If you've looked at them and you're ready to say, hey, put together an ordinance, we like the recommendations of the LDB, follow that, and put together a draft, I can do that. Or we can go through them and reject or obtain a consensus opinion. My opinion is I think the LDB did a pretty good job. I think the recommendation that you accommodate caregivers be done, and it's appropriate to do so, but then of course that it should be done and protect against abuses so that that housing stock is available. The main thrust here is to have that 55 and over housing stock be available in the town. One of the main reasons that you have that restriction is to make that available to people so that people have a place to go that might not be able to afford something different outside of the community, so that they can be close to their families and their relatives and friends that they might have after having spent a lifetime in Tabernacle. And so, by having that Allenwood and age restrictions associated with Allenwood, you're making sure that that housing need is addressed. So I think it's important to do that, and I think it's important to maybe massage the language in the modern world to provide for caretakers. I also think it's appropriate that, should there be violations out there, that you oughtn't to be modifying the ordinance to accommodate the violations. And otherwise, I think the other recommendations further refine the statute concerning caretaker status, when they would need to be out of there, and under what circumstances, and again, none, if the language is adopted, would anyone under age 21 be permitted to occupy the mobile home, so irrespective of their caretaker or caregiver status. So again, you can take some time to look at it, you can tell me put together a draft ordinance, or we can wrestle with it a little bit to come to a consensus if there's some difference of opinion among the committee.
Well, Peter and myself, I've reviewed this, and of course, being on the Land Development Board, agree with the Land Development Board's recommendation. I'd like to hear how the rest of the committee feels before we move forward.
If this, let's say we say move forward with a resolution, is this something that would be given to this board in December's meeting?
I can have it ready if you want me to prepare an ordinance, but remember, we can't bridge the new committee, so we wouldn't really have the option to adopt it until January.
Then I would suggest that you allow committee-elect to have the opportunity to review.
Which would mean pushing off to introduce it until January. Unless we're going to have another meeting in the month of December, and at this point, I think the only one that's scheduled is the 23rd, which sounds like a pretty big agenda for a closeout and for a regular, but I would agree with Joe. I think it's important for Nancy and Bob to be part of this discussion.
Peter, say anything?
100% agree.
I agree.
So Peter will revisit this
I'll bring it up
in the year 2020.
If I'm lucky enough to have the opportunity, I'll bring it up at a future meeting as a further discussion item again.
Thank you. Anything else, Peter?
No, I just have that executive session, please.
Okay. Mr. Sudbury?
I do have one question, though. Like I said, committee-elect, would Bob and Nancy be able to receive the information to review ahead of time, or no?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Emergency management.
Good evening, folks.
Good evening, Bob.
So from emergency management, we are looking forward to any and all of you that can attend the Tabernacle tree lighting festivities that we'll be assisting with facilitating on the evening of December the 6th. We look forward to the community coming out for that as usual. And the other thing that we're working on is our emergency operations plan is up for renewal and meeting in the year, and we are revising that as appropriate. So that's all I have, but wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and a Merry Christmas if I don't see you.
How did you make out with the flu shots?
The flu shots went great. We had at least 75 flu shots administered, had plenty of cars come through, and let's hope we never have to do that for real. But it was a really nice success. We learned a lot from the application and got to test out that annex of our emergency operations plan as well. So it was a great experience. Thank you for asking.
Would you do something different next time? Is there some lesson learned, Bob, that you could take from that exercise?
There were a couple things we learned in terms of, traffic flow, trying to get the people inside the bays to be more of a team, because we had certain people directing traffic in, and, some of the different organizations that were administering shops or taking paperwork would kind of be standing out in the lanes with their rear ends hanging out in the traffic, and we'd have to tell people, get out of the way, be safe. But it was a safe event, nobody got injured. We just learned that there's some things that we need to keep an eye on to make sure that we keep as much safety protocols in place. But the idea of dividing it between Seneca High School, so that even if we had hundreds of people coming in with paper, being able to fill the paper out in a controlled environment and then proceed down Hawken Road to go through the back of the fire company, because we have to give the shots in a controlled environment. It can't be out in the rain or under easy ups, so we have to have that controlled environment with barricades protecting the nurses. That aspect worked great. So literally, they weren't allowed out of the high school parking lot unless they had the flu shot permission forms, the medical information and such for that. So it showed that we could handle a large volume, but it did work, so it was a good test, valuable exercise. So thank you for this.
Thank you. Okay, committee reports. Member Yates?
I don't have anything to report, but I do have a couple questions. First question is you made a comment, I can't remember whether it was to Mr. Brooks or Mrs. Brooks, about a public safety committee. When was that formed? I thought Sammy was the liaison. I don't remember a committee being formed.
Yes. We appointed a committee to look at the fire department contract. So maybe I titled it wrong. But yes, Sammy is the public safety liaison, and Kim and him are assigned to a subcommittee to look at the fire contract. So I clearly stated it wrong. That's the subcommittee I was referring for, Sean to give the LoSAP paperwork to, for them to review since they're looking at the contract.
All right. And that's leading to a second question I have is what's going on with the contract with the fire company? Because I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, we're still meeting with people, Joe, and still in negotiations as of right now. We have another meeting with them next week.
With the fire department?
Yes.
So things are moving forward on a good note, I hope?
Moving forward.
Moving forward. Okay, that answers my question.
Committeeman Lee?
I'm not done yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then my next question is what have you, I mean, if you remember I asked the committee to be proactive about a public safety director. What is the status of that? What's going on with that?
Be the emergency management coordinator.
Emergency management coordinator, I'm sorry.
As far as emergency management coordinator?
Yeah.
I can tell you that our current emergency management coordinator has been in touch with the state. He stays in touch with the state to see if there's any conflict, and he hasn't received any information back from them. As of today, I even spoke with Mr. Sunbury today, and he was in touch with the state, and he has not received any ruling back from them.
I believe, like I said, I mean, I'm not going to be on this board after December 31st, but I do believe that everybody understands where I'm coming from is how can you be an employee and a boss at the same time? To me, you're one or the other.
And that's the question that was presented to the state.
I mean, nothing against Mr. Sunbury, I'm just saying, to me, ethically, personally, I don't see where it, or how it can stand. Because, if there's a problem with, let's say you have a problem with the emergency management coordinator, and it has to come to the committee to address. How do you address it? Like I said, it's just something that I asked the committee to look at and review.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Chuck?
That's it.
Okay, Committeeman Wick?
This isn't on my list, but just to piggyback on Joe's comment, I guess if the state comes back and says that Bob can serve in 2 positions, obviously the committee has to absorb that. Although I will say that there was a 4-to-1 vote that said we wanted to look at resumes and advertise, because to be in a position to be able to hire someone if need be. And if the state comes back and says that Bob can't serve in both positions, what's the plan of the committee? Were resumes ever received? Was there any review of those? I'm the one that hired Bob and went through the resumes we did the first time. My point is that I think if, irregardless of what the state says, the committee ought to have a plan. And I'm kind of wondering what the status of that is.
Joe, comment there.
It was advertised, the time frame has closed. We received a number of resumes. Only 3 have qualified. Everyone else lived outside the township. And that's where they sit, ready for direction.
So what's the plan for the committee at that point after, are we waiting, so we're going to wait and see what the state says? Is that what the plan is, regardless of how the committee took action, I guess?
Well, I think that's going to be up to the emergency management coordinator, that if he gets direction from the state and whether he wants to, once he's sworn in, if he wants to keep both positions, if the state allows it, or if he wants to step down from the position. As Doug said, if he does step down, or if it's mandated that he step down, we'll have to go do interviews with those resumes that we have and select the new emergency management coordinator.
I'm hopeful that that can be executed in a relatively short order, because I can tell you that there is a transitional period that the committee needs to consider. You do not want to have a gap for sure between representation for that particular position. A couple things. I wanted to, first of all, congratulate Nancy and Bob on their election. It was strange not to be on the ballot, but I was actually kind of glad not to be on the ballot at the same time. But I really want to congratulate both of you. And I also want to strongly urge the committee and specifically you guys to do everything you can and the committee to do everything you can to welcome these 2 new individuals. We've got a lot of experience that's left over the past 2 years between myself and Joe. They're coming off, and Rick last year. I think an orientation of some kind for Bob and Nancy, and even for Sammy, actually would be really beneficial. I don't exactly know what, we've never really done anything. I can tell you that coming on, I was the new guy when I first came on 9 years ago. I was just kind of told, Rick, this is the way things work. But there wasn't anything formal in terms of specifically talking about how we communicate, how we work collectively as a committee, things that we can do, things we can't do. I think it would be really beneficial for Nancy and Bob to go through some sort of an orientation to help them with adjustment, but also to protect the committee in terms of communication within the committee itself. I think it's really, really important, but I'm very excited about you guys coming on board. I truly am. Last week, I went to the League of Municipalities down in Atlantic City. Did you get a chance to go to that last week? I think it's really, obviously it's a great experience down there, but I think it's really important to go to. So it was my last time. I'll probably be doing that for a while anyway. hosted Congressman Van Drew on Election Day at our forum, which was a great opportunity to be able to talk to him about a lot of different issues that have to do not just with cranberries, obviously, but also from a municipal standpoint. We did have an opportunity to be able to talk about Oprah a little bit, which was good. Took care of that one. Also want to get an idea of what the plan was for selection of professionals. Having done a lot of that heavy lifting of the large boxes that are probably sitting down with Sean's office, I would strongly urge the committee to come up with a game plan in terms of having that process complete. There's a lot of resumes and a lot of packets that come that ought to be reviewed, and I'm hopeful that that can get accomplished in short order. I'm willing to help go through those packets one last time. The other thing I need to mention is I'm very sad to report that Glenn Robbins, our superintendent at Tabernacle School, has accepted a position at Brigantine to be their superintendent. His contract expired in Tabernacle on June 30th, and Brigantine offered him a contract to be their superintendent. I think that's a huge loss for Tabernacle. Mr. Robbins brought a lot of energy to this community, and being someone that was from this community that went out and got a lot of experience and brought back to Tabernacle, I think was really, really positive. So I really enjoyed working with Glenn in the period of time that he's been here. He clearly understood the importance for our committee and our board to work with the school board, and I think it's a huge loss for Tabernacle for sure. And Joe, you can sort of appreciate this, at being a Brigantine resident part-time. Brigantine's definitely getting a great individual. The tree lighting, which is this coming next week, I think, right? Mark, Friday?
The 6th.
The 6th. Unfortunately, I won't be able to attend. I'll be at Cranberry Institute meeting in Las Vegas. But I will say that I'm very, very proud of that event. It's something that a lot of people contribute to and put together. I think it's a great, great event, and I'm looking forward to seeing the tree lighting, or the tree lit, as I come back from the airport about 1 o'clock on Saturday morning. I'll also happy to report that the Verizon has indicated to me, Sylvia DeVecchio specifically, that FiOS is for sale in all of the sections that they had reported in the different zones. What was the word? The term I used? Phases. Thank you. So all 4 phases are now open for sale. What that basically means is that those residents who are lucky enough to be able to get the opportunity to be able to order FiOS are in the process of, are able to do that now. But to go back to something that Bob Sunbury and I talked about at one point, there's more to the story. There's an opportunity there. I think it's something the committee needs to make a decision on at some point. But now that you have a certain part of this work done, I think it's really important for the committee to consider what other work you should do. And what that boils down to is that Verizon is mandated by the Board of Public Utilities to complete the entire census tract, which includes all of Tabernacle. That will mean an active approach by this committee to essentially hold Verizon's feet to the fire when it comes to fiber. Is that important to this committee? You guys are going to have to decide that. But I will tell you that it is Verizon's responsibility, based on the agreement with BPU, that they do that. Again, that will require some work on the part of this committee. I think if fiber is important to everyone in Tabernacle, that it's something to pursue. But in terms of their responsibility, they have accomplished what we wanted to accomplish initially, was to get everybody high-speed internet in Tabernacle, which we've done. That's the good part. But they have a responsibility to do the rest. Whether or not Tabernacle wants to hold their feet to the fire is a decision that the folks will have to make at some point. And I just want to confirm our only meeting date in December is the 23rd of December. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that will not change?
Actually, that's what I was going to bring up.
Okay. All right. With that being said, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Committeeman Lee. Committeeman Moore?
Okay, as everybody heard, TFC contract, we meet with our fire company, Chief Kennard and President Cheryl Smith next week. So we'll continue with that. And also Chief Kennard was unable to make the meeting tonight, but he did send, I'm assuming everybody up here got the quarterly report for the fire company. That's all I have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor Brian.
Just one question, is there any way we can change that meeting from 2 days before Christmas?
Do you have a proposed date and time?
Well, it's gonna be a matter of what everyone's good for, because Christmas falls right bad smack in the middle of the week. And it's usually our closeout meeting, so if you go the week before, it's gonna be too soon, I think.
More than likely, I'm going to be in Connecticut.
So even the 23rd wouldn't work for you? So that's one down.
I think my granddaughter's more important than my last meeting.
I'm not gonna argue with you on that, Jim.
Pretty much free anytime, so.
I just think,
When do you want to have it, Kim?
well, before Christmas would be, like the week before would be too soon, correct? To close out?
No, whatever you want to do.
You can close it out whenever you want, just.
I know,
it's a
but we
matter
have
of
bills and
business.
things like that. That's what I'm trying to say. If we
Say-
go,
Say again.
we would have bills that we have to pay.
Right.
And everything, so if you go, say that.
Leave it up to the fuzzy mathematician down there.
Buzzy?
I think he's talking to you.
Now, we can pay bills
Whenever.
whenever.
So,
It's not like, there's a thing called encumbrances payable and accounts payable at the end of the year, that's perfectly fine. To get things charged to the proper budget.
would everyone be interested in moving it up to the week before?
What date?
16th?
16th, 17th, 19th, 18th.
I'm good.
You had an LDB meeting, you have an LDB meeting on the 18th?
It should be
No,
the first
fourth.
Wednesday.
LDB's the 4th. Yep.
I'm good 16, 17, or 19.
That's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
No, Monday, Tuesday,
Monday,
Thursday.
Tuesday, Thursday.
I'm not good,
Monday,
I'm not good on
Tuesday,
the
Thursday.
18th.
So 16, 17, 19?
I'm available all those days.
Available the 16th only of those.
What was that?
The 16th I'm available, but I'm booked on the 17th.
All right, how we feel about the 16th?
That's a Monday.
It's a Monday, so it'd just be a week sooner.
I think it's entirely up to Sean.
I'm fine,
Okay.
thank you.
Senator Menendez is coming on the 16th, by the way. I
Okay.
forgot to report that. It's on my calendar.
Okay.
Anyway, but he's coming in the morning. He's going to be
All
around.
right, so we good for the 16th,
Is that still at 7:30 or
7:30?
time change?
7:30? Okay.
December 16th, 7:30.
I will reschedule that meeting.
You have that, Ms. Shawn?
Yes.
Is the employee Christmas party still the 19th? Do I have that right?
The holiday safety lunch? Yes.
Awful lot of tinsel for not being at Christmas.
Anything else good?
That was it.
Okay. I just want to go over a couple of highlights of the quarterly report that Chief Kennard gave us tonight. And just let everyone know that Chief Kennard could not be with us tonight because he's playing in the charity hockey game to raise money for family members. But it's just some of the highlights coming forward. They're hosting a breakfast with Santa on December the 14th. They'll be hosting the senior holiday dinner on December 8th. It's on a Sunday. They'll be helping decorate the township Christmas tree on December the 3rd. And they will be here to participate in the tree lighting ceremony on 12/6. I believe they're picking up Santa and bringing him into town by way of a fire truck. And I believe Santa's due to come here at 7 p.m., Mark, is that right?
I believe so.
Call all the North Pole, you got that all squared away?
All squared away.
Okay. That's all I had to report. Public comment? Yes, there's something here.
Mark Lanier, 32 Washington Way. First of all, thanks everybody for all their efforts. Second of all, thank you too for everything you've done for the township in your tenure. And I know you're not going away, you're not wallflowers, so I suspect you'll still be in the public light, but thank you for all your efforts. I also want to congratulate Nancy and Bob for their ascension to the throne here, so good luck next year. I did want to, obviously, you've talked about it numerous times here, the tree lighting is on December 6th. We've had, every year we seem to have a bigger turnout, so it's really gaining some momentum. We had, I think, 4 meetings with the team here in the township building in the last couple of months, and I think everything's under control, but everybody's excited about it. Chief Kennard did actually, interestingly enough, the Russos once again generously donating a tree for the cause. There was some concern because some of our volunteers are getting older, were having a hard time decorating a big tree. So we were saying, well, maybe we need to get a smaller tree. And Andy would have nothing up. He says, if I'm going to donate a tree, it's going to be a big tree. That's it. So Andy, Chief Kennard, is nice enough to offer to maybe help us with one of his ladder trucks just to get the tree set up a little bit. So they're going to use that as a training exercise, I think. So anyway, so that's all under control. I think we've got everything under control. The gazebo, fantastic. As you just left, but again, the gazebo I think is really going to be a great addition. So we're really looking forward to decorating that as well. So anyway, I hope everybody can make it, or as many people as can. So we look forward to that. And I think that's it. So again, everybody have a great Thanksgiving. I appreciate your help.
Thanks, Mark. Anyone else from the public? Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Stuart Brooks, Forest Meadow Road. I want to return just briefly to the discussion of open and transparent. I understand you guys feel that you're open and transparent. I think you've got a long way to go, I really do. The high water mark and the opposite of open and transparent was the chalkboard presentations, which still no one seems to have any problem with. And there's a straight line from that to 2019, December 2019. Peter, it goes through, if I can respond to your comment about the good faith argument that you described regarding rosters. The good faith argument regarding the rosters tried to justify why volunteers deserve more protection than policemen. Policemen have the rosters in public. If that's allowable, acceptable, commonplace, I just don't see a good faith argument that the volunteers' rosters shouldn't also be public when we're paying insurance and making other significant public contributions. That's a legal argument. Arguments like that are in legal briefs, but it just doesn't make common sense. The point that of 2019 that it leads to is the discussion which this board had regarding the, your word not mine, putting the squeeze on the fire company to terminate their contract. The 3 committeemen on my right came in all in favor of it. The 2 committeemen on my left, Mr. Yates, Mr. Lee, had no idea that this was even a discussion. It was obvious that that was a discussion that had been held not in the public, but had been decided or discussed among the 3 outside. That's not open and transparent, clearly. And that's just one example. You have a long way to go to reach open and transparent. I sincerely hope you reach it. I do. Regarding the, Mr. Lee, I congratulate you and appreciate your comments about the Oprah resolution and raising it to a higher level, saying the issue is not Tabernacle. Focus on the larger issue. But the point is, it's Tabernacle's resolution. Tabernacle is saying that Oprah is fraught with abuse and misuse. But I asked you for examples and you know none. It's as if you say, everyone says it's fraught with abuse and misuse, therefore we'll say the same thing. And as to the count of Oprah requests, with all due respect to LaShawn, when your count in the resolution differs from the count in the log of the clerk, that's an issue. It's an issue because the clerk has then told you she's counted that for the purposes of the resolution in a way that, frankly, no one else counts it. She separated them out sentence by sentence. So that is Tabernacle. Tabernacle's saying, in essence, I'm inflating, the township is inflating numbers so we can lobby for for what we think is a good cause. You want to be honest about it. That's the issue. Lastly, as to the consent order, Mr. Lang, if you want to say that the consent order, and I can read.
15 seconds.
Fine. If you want to diminish the consent order by saying we only agreed to it to get out of the lawsuit, that's fine. But that makes my point the stronger. The issue with the consent order was that the clerk had said Oprah is harassment, or this particular Oprah was harassment. That gets to my point, my larger point. Oprah is something that serves the citizens. My attitude was always, these are public record, citizens should have them. And it's completely opposite by saying Oprah is harassment. That's the difference, and that's what I would encourage this administration to get to. A more open, transparent attitude where public records are provided as a default option. If there are legitimate questions, that's fine. But it seems to me that more often than not, the default option is, I need to send this for legal review. I'm not going to give this out until this or that. And it prolongs the process, makes the process more expensive, and it's an attitude that that I think is not in the best interest of you, the committee, or the citizens. Thank you for the extra time.
You're welcome, Mr. Brooks. Anyone else from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Colleen Windows, 7 Lee Drive. I missed Mr. Kramer, but maybe Mr. Hosey can help me with these. So the radar signs were put on Lee Drive, and I want to thank you very much for the placement of those. I really appreciate it. I have seen a significant decrease in the speed, but we still have speeders on the road, and it still is an issue, especially with the placement of the sign where they are. I'm not sure if they were placed where they are because there was an existing sign there, or if there was some mathematical calculation of that. But I wanted to get clarification on that, and also, in my opinion, they should be placed at the end of the curve, because when people are accelerating around there, they're constantly going faster and faster. And at my driveway, my neighbor's driveway, and at 9 Lee is when they finally see the stop sign in the distance, and that's when they start to stop. My other question is it's just in the one direction going toward Ann. It doesn't seem like there's another one, unless I'm missing it. It doesn't seem like there's another radar sign going in the opposite direction.
We purchased 2. I'm not sure how they're set up out there, but could I ask you to do this?
Sure.
Unfortunately, Mr. Kramer had to leave. Could you contact him this week, or at your convenience, and share with him the thoughts that you're sharing with us about where you think it would be more strategic to put the signs?
Yeah, because...
Could you do that?
Yes, sure.
I'm sure it'll work with you. They are portable. We
Yeah.
can pretty much put them wherever we want.
Yeah, I think the concern is, though, there's really no more signs along that street. There would have to be a sign.
Well, we may have to drive it first.
Yeah, so, but my concern is that the current placement, I don't think that the information that would be obtained from the log, that I think Mr. Kramer is going to get from that, would be accurate information at the placement that it is today. If it's placed in a correct position at the point where the drivers are at their top speed, I think that the data would be more useful to determine any future things that need to be done for that road. So.
Well, this is the first time we just received these. This is the first road we've installed, and hopefully we'll learn and get it right.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Anyone else for the public? Yes, ma'am.
Wendy Riley, 27 Stevens Lane. So Tabernacle has raised World Series winner.
Could you come forward, Will, and maybe raise your voice a little bit?
Tabernacle has raised World Series winner. Sean Doolittle grew up in Tabernacle. He went to our elementary school and our middle school and to Seneca High School. And Shawnee High School, and his mom went to Seneca High School. And I think Tabernacle should brag a little bit about it. We need some signs up, so everybody can know. Not a lot of people know that he's from here, so we need to spread the word a little bit about that. I thought maybe we could put a sign here, if we put a sign at Town Hall, kind of like a historical sign, welcome to Tabernacle, New Jersey, hometown of the 2019 World Series winner Sean Doolittle. And we can make the Washington Nationals part a little smaller, if that's preferred, but. Or I was over at Patty Boker today, and that's where I used to play baseball for TAA. And they had the big chain link fences, and a lot of people that sponsor teams put signs up, and we could put something there along the same lines, just so everybody's aware of this. So we could brag.
Have you approached the Athletic Association?
I have not.
So Joe, I will tell you that the Lynn Eddy, who is the president of our athletic association, has sent a letter to Sean's mother, who is still resident here. And I believe the school also sent the letter, and I've seen, on behalf of the committee, my name was on the letter also to his mother, looking for a date and time when he would be here to visit and to do some type of recognition when he's available to come. Hopefully visit his mother at some point in time and do something in the schools, do something with TAA, etc.
Okay, that's fantastic.
He lives out of state. I believe he lives in Chicago. But he does come back to visit from time to time. And yeah, he did pitch in Game 6. He pitched in Game 6. I appreciate you bringing it to our attention.
Okay, sure. Glad it's already in the works. It's good to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, and if you want, we can give you our TAA president's contact information if you'd like to talk with her.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Mrs. Brooks?
Let Rudy go.
Hey, Rudy.
Age over.
Rudy Sound, Summer Drive. There's a sign, radar sign, whatever you want to call it, at the Woodside going east out of Eaglesmere. And the LoSAP amount, is that a correct number? What you're stating?
The LoSAP amount?
Yes.
That we approved?
That you approved. If you add up these numbers, it's a little more than what it says.
Is it? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Mrs. Brooks?
Fran Brooks, Morris Meadow Road. I just wanted to address a couple of things that were stated by Mr. Lang regarding perverted results of Oprah cases and acting in good faith. The two examples that were used, one was the farmland assessment case that had concerned Robert Brick's documents, which were clearly public documents, and Oprah was pretty clear about it. Frankly, I would have never taken that case if there had been even a scintilla of doubt that the provision in Oprah didn't cover Mr. Brick's public documents. What was really perverted about that case was that my attorney and I decided that we would offer to settle that case for the $300 filing fee, the complaint fee. And you folks rejected that. You actually rejected that offer to settle for $300 for the filing fee. So that was really the perversion on your side and your decision making. And the other thing about the EOP, and you should know this by now, is not inviolable. The Emergency Operations Plan has plenty of components that are actually public documents. And had you done your proper research with your counselor, you would have seen that it is not inviolable, that it is completely violable. And in effect, there was a lot of information circulating around that a conscious decision was made to hire, because of all of the things going on with the Tabernacle Rescue Squad and their unwillingness to provide documents, et cetera, that was a perfect place. There was a lot of information circulating around the community that a conscious decision was made by the committee and maybe even your council that would be a perfect place to hide their rosters, because they were not forthcoming about their rosters, even though the JIF required it.
Ms. Brooks, I don't appreciate that innuendo, because that's all it is. It's baseless innuendo.
I'm just telling you
It's
what
just
I know.
baseless innuendo, that's all.
Well, it's baseless on your side.
You have nothing to base that on. Not one word can you say
Okay. Well,
in support of
I'm sorry,
that
Mr. Lang.
assertion, which is characteristic of
my
how you conduct yourself.
No, it's not characteristic. It's not characteristic. Listen, I've won every single Oprah case. Maybe you failed to remember that, Mr. Lang. I've won every single Oprah case because you have withheld, this committee has withheld our.
Another false assertion.
The other, oh, it's not a false, I may not have won the TRS case, but every case against this committee, I have prevailed, so.
Fran, you prevailed on some cases only because this committee has decided to settle, to save the taxpayer money.
Well, let me just inform you, Mr. Yates, that you've made some pretty bad decisions about withholding documents that were clearly public. So let's not go there. The other thing I'd like to point out, excuse me, this is my time.
To the Koran's memorial.
Mr. Lang, this is my time, okay? And you're eating into my 3 minutes.
No, actually, I stop it every time you speak.
Okay, well, that's nice. I appreciate that, Mrs. Brown. The other thing that I'd like to point out, for over 6 years, there's been discussion and evaluation analysis on the Oprah and OPMA with Senator Weinberg's office for over 6 years with all interest groups. And the fact remains that it would never please the League and the League of Municipalities, the Clerks Association and the Boards of Education Association to actually to agree on any provision in the bills. So the reform legislation has come a long way in terms of trying to satisfy the League and the Clerks Association. A commission isn't really going to do anything. It's not going to reveal any more than what Weinberg's office has analyzed and done. So the fact remains that it's just another stalling tactic. And, you know, and Mr. Yates, I really would have appreciated if you had shown some concern about all of the residents who've been paying taxes for years, including the farmers who run their really expensive farming equipment over Carranza Road, as you expressed about people driving Corvettes in the Grande subdivision. So none of that has, haven't seen too much sympathy for the residents of driving
Carranza Road this month.
Anyone else from the public? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public portion, and we're going to go into executive session. Resolution CS 11252019, whereas the Open Public Meetings Act, PL 1975, Chapter 231, permits the exclusion of the public from the meeting in certain circumstances. And whereas this public body is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, and whereas the government body wishes to discuss a litigation matter with respect to Cranbrook versus Tabernacle Township, BUR-002065-19. Minutes will be kept, and once the matter involving confidentiality the above no longer requires same, and the minutes can be made public. So now therefore be it resolved that the public will be excluded from this meeting. Be it further resolved after executive session, we will reopen the meeting in which action may or may not be taken. A motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Mayor, can we have Committeemen McGinnis and Sunbury present for?
Yes, sir.
To bring them up to speed.
Invite them into executive session if you'd like.
I'm just saying to bring them up to speed.
Yep.
It's a good thing.
Okay.
Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.